975. That is the streak that my son had on Duolingo for learning Mandarin.
香港人
Around that time, I took him to a language exchange. And you know what happened? He sat across from a native speaker. The person asked him something. Silence. He didn't understand. This is like the whole conversation. Like he couldn't understand a single thing that was being said to him. And it was like the 900 days that he studied evaporated. And he wasn't embarrassed because he was lazy. He was embarrassed because he had worked hard and it didn't prepare him for this moment. Think about this. Let's say you moved abroad, you did the right things, you studied, you used an app, or you took classes, or you worked on learning the local language, maybe through a textbook. And then you can read signs, you understand like written instructions, and maybe if a conversation is slow, you can sort of follow a little bit if you concentrate. But you can read and decipher, right? And then real life happens. You walk into a bakery and maybe someone behind the counter says something fast and or something casual. And it's like, hey, if that wasn't in any lesson that you ever heard, then it's like your mind goes blank, or you have to go to the bank and handle something official. And just the thought of it sitting on your to-do list makes you tense because so you put it off, or you find workarounds, or you try to prepare, you don't know what to do, and you ask someone else to come with you or do it for you. And in the back of your mind, you tell yourself the same thing every time. I just need to study more. I'm not ready yet. When I know more, I'll feel more confident. And let me tell you this directly. That is not how it works, because the confidence does not come from preparing and studying more. Confidence comes from trying and from doing something again and again. Studying more is not going to fix your problem. Let's look at what's actually going on here. Every time you in a language class or you have an app or you're studying the language, it all trains you to be a passenger in a conversation, to just be part of it. You sit there and you receive input and you process it and you respond when you're ready. So that's kind of easy. You get used to that. And there's no pressure. There's no speed. There's no real human on the other side waiting for you. And it's fine to build a foundation, but it also trains a specific skill, and that's the skill of being reactive. But real conversation is different. Real conversation requires you to be in the driver's seat, to take initiative, to actually steer the conversation. And sometimes you have to initiate, or you have to hold your position, even if you don't catch every word that the other person's saying. And to keep that interaction moving can be hard, but it's important, even when you're not sure what just happened. That's something that you don't really learn. No one teaches you that because it's not a language skill. It's a social skill. And this is the thing that most language learners never figure out. The freeze you feel, or the anxiety, or the momentary blank that you have at the bakery counter has almost nothing to do with how much vocabulary you know or how much of the language you know, but it has everything to do with not knowing how to be in control of the interaction. You're waiting to feel ready, but that feeling of readiness never comes from studying. It comes from leading. What do I mean by leading? See, when most people freeze in a real conversation, they think the problem is comprehension. They think, well, okay, I don't understand what they said, so I panic, right? But let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a loud place, a bar, a party, a noisy street, and you couldn't really hear what the other person said, and you just kind of handled it? You leaned in, you asked them to repeat it, you laughed and said you couldn't hear it, or you somehow navigated it, or you responded to what you think you may have heard. And it didn't really shut down the conversation. You still stayed in it, right? Now, the language barrier feels a little bit different because you're giving it a different meaning. You kind of decided that not understanding means that you failed. And, hesitating means that you're exposed, people are judging you and all of that. But the other person isn't judging you, but you think that you're embarrassing yourself. But that's not a language problem. That's the story that you're telling yourself about what this interaction means, what this conversation means that you're in front of. So the shift that changes everything is this. You don't need to understand everything to stay in control. You need to know how to lead the conversation, even if you're the foreigner with little vocabulary and you're talking to a native speaker, you still can control the conversation to some extent from that position as a foreigner who doesn't speak very well. So what you can do, you can learn a few anchor phrases, things to like how to react when you don't understand something, how to laugh it off, how to continue in the conversation, how always have a few specific questions ready that you can throw out that you can ask the other person, like a calm opening or a way to redirect when you get lost. And that's it. That's really the difference between someone who freezes and someone who connects. If you have like a small portfolio of things to say in any situation and you use those, then that gives you the confidence that you can always continue a conversation, even if you didn't understand half of what was said to you. It's not always that important to understand every detail. If you prepare that right, you can walk into any interaction, a bakery, a bank, a neighbor's front door, whatever, and you can be the one who sets the tone of the conversation. And not because your grammar is good, but because you know how to hold a room and how to connect to the other person. And they kind of follow your lead, right? So when I could go back to the story of my son, after that language exchange, he was, I don't know, kind of quiet on the way home and he wasn't upset about it. He was just thinking. And then he told me, it's really weird because I knew the words. I would be able to make sentences, but I couldn't find them because I thought I didn't understand anything. So I didn't know what to say. And that's exactly it. Like in a structured lesson, the words are always like findable, right? You always, because you know which words you had in the last lesson and they repeat in the next lesson. And maybe a few are added and you can learn them. So they're like in your reach, right? But the environment is designed so that you succeed when you study. There's no real stakes like in the real world, right? Like no speed, no human who's waiting for you or who's unpredictable or you don't know what they're going to say. But the moment all of that is present, like when you're in a real conversation with a real person in a real place with real expectations, then your brain, it doesn't really know what to do. And for my son, it was, not because he hadn't studied, because he just never practiced being in a conversation. Being prepared for a conversation, that's really the difference. And most people spend years on the wrong side of this. Like they just study the language and learn more and more about it, more grammar, more words, more vocabulary, even more expressions, but they're not used to having a conversation. So, and that's what for him was 900 days of preparation, but not one day of navigating a conversation. So the fix wasn't to do more Duolingo or do it faster or to advance to the streak of 2000, but the fix was learning to be present in the room, breathe, lead with what you know how to say. How do you recover when you get lost? And skills that have nothing to do with a language streak. So what can you actually do? When you stop preparing to understand everything because you'll never get there, and you start preparing to just lead any situation, that's what will help you. So that means a few things practically. It means first, build a small set of anchor phrases for the situations that scare you most. And I'm not talking about a script. I'm talking about things that, like Lego blocks, that you could just use and that you're so familiar with that you can pull out at any time. Something that sounds like, if you want to agree with something, you have like 2, 3, 4 ways of saying that, right? If you want to, or if you want to not agree with someone, make a friendly remark to someone, to whatever they said, that just like makes them feel good. Things like that, things that you can pull out that just feel right in the moment, that you have something to say, even if what you would normally answer, it doesn't come to you because you don't find the words that quickly. There's always something that you can say, right? And that kind of lightens up the conversation. And then also kind of throws the ball back to the other person. So that's one thing. A bunch of these situations, a bunch of recovery phrases, like a reliable opening, a way to signal what you need, what to say when you get lost. Like these 3 things alone, that's like a basis, like a floor. And once you have that floor, you can't fall because you have a floor to stand on. And the second thing is you reframe in your own mind what the interaction is. Don't see it as a test. Don't see it as someone like a situation where you have to perform. Don't see it as something where you're being judged. Like if you're in a store or in a bakery, the person working there, they're not evaluating your grammar or anything. They want to serve you or sell you something or just be nice to you. And they've done this 1,000 times. So they're completely on your side. When you walk in as someone who is calm and clear about what they want, and even if it's in broken language and you throw in some words in English here or there, doesn't really matter all that much. You'll be met with patience almost every single time. And the other thing is, like, you have to accept that you'll miss some things, that you will not understand everything. Accept that going into the conversation. You won't understand every word, and that's not a failure. That's normal. It's just an interaction. And even native speakers miss things sometimes. The difference is that they don't interpret it as a sign that they don't belong or they, foreign to the situation. You belong there. You live there. The language is just catching up to that fact. So what I want you to take from this is that the confidence you're looking for is not going to be found in more studying of the language. It's not waiting for you at some future level to be fluent. It's not something that you earn by, getting the grammar right. The confidence itself is already inside of you. You navigated uncomfortable situations your whole life in your own language, right? In your own culture. And you know how to be in a room, you know how to defend your position or how to say what you want. And you know how to read people and, and see when they're hostile, when they're more friendly, when they're agreeing, disagreeing, when they are curious. You know how to hold yourself. That's already in you. And you just haven't learned to bring that into this new language or into this new environment yet. But it's already there inside of you, right? And that's really the work, not more vocabulary lists, not, the next streak, the next chapter in the book. It's just learn to be you. Remember who you are, confident, present human, just in a new language environment. That's all. And when you make that shift, then everything changes. The bakery becomes easy and the bank becomes manageable. And the new place that you move to, it starts to feel like home more and more. Now, I'd love to hear what your specific freeze moment looks like. Drop it in the comments, and every situation is different. And sometimes just naming it out loud is the first step. See you in the next video.